Yo, what's going on, y'all? You're back. I'm your host, Paco, and you're listening to Occupy the Media. Got this article here from Business Insider. Republicans are finally getting nervous about Ron Paul's secret delegate strategy. Think they've been nervous since 4 years ago. For several weeks, I have been writing about Ron Paul's upset victories at district and state GOP conventions and about the surprising success of his delegate strategy. Now, with Paul's delegate sweeps in Maine and Nevada, it looks like Mitt Romney and the Republican Party are finally starting to catch on to the trend. Paul supporters swept this weekend state GOP conventions, 21 of 24 in Maine, 22 of 28 in Nevada. Let's see what else we got here. The twin victories come on the heels of Paul's surprise delegate wins at district caucuses and state conventions in Missouri, Minnesota, Colorado, and Louisiana, as well as a Paul-friendly takeover of the Alaska GOP. Paul supporters have managed to stage these state-level co-ops despite significant resistance from local establishment Republicans, many of whom are predictably reluctant to relinquish their power to the insurgents. So far, however, the Paul campaign has attributed most of the establishment's shenanigans to local animosities. But there's a growing evidence that the Romney camp and the national GOP are stepping up their efforts to prevent an embarrassing Ron Paul uprising on the floor of the Republican National Convention. In Maine, for example, the Romney campaign dispatched its top lawyer, Benjamin Ginsburg, to oversee the state convention proceedings this weekend. It's worth noting that Ginsburg is best known for his work for George W. Bush during the 2000 Florida recount. Ginsburg's presence didn't stop the convention from descending into chaos, with both sides accusing the other of breaking party rules with phony ballots and illegal delegate votes. Ultimately, Paul supporters outnumbered and outorganized their Romney counterparts, winning the majority of the state RNC delegates as well as both RNC committee chair posts and 34 out of 50 open spots on the state party committee. Romney supporters have pledged to mount a legal challenge to the results with the Republican National Committee. In Nevada, the Paul sweep was largely expected. The Silver State has been a Ron Paul stronghold since the 2008 election, when the state GOP literally turned off the lights at their convention to avoid seating Ron Paul delegates to the national convention. Since then, Paul supporters have won elections to local and county GOP boards and are now major players in the state Republican politics. The establishment is us now, Ron Paul's Nevada campaign director Carl Bunce told Business Insider before this weekend's convention. If we turn off the lights, we know where the light switch is. Let's see here. But Nevada's Paul-friendly party establishment didn't stop the RNC from trying to stop stop it from completing their takeover this weekend. And let's see here. Romney's also apparently keen not to avoid a second embarrassment in Iowa, a state where Paul continues to make significant inroads. At the Republican National Committee Summit in Phoenix last month, Romney aides tried to force Iowa three-person RNC delegation to sign a loyalty pledge promising to vote for Romney at the national convention. Iowa GOP Chair A.J. Spiker, a former state director for the Paul campaign, told Business Insider that the Romney camp backed down after he and the two Iowa RNC chairs refused to sign the pledge. And privately, sources close to the Ron Paul campaign say they believe Republicans will continue to ramp up his efforts to block Paul delegates at state conventions, particularly after Romney's embarrassing delegate losses in Massachusetts. But state organizers tell Business Insider that Paul supporters are significantly more organized than Romney's delegate team and are ready to put up a tough fight in states like Idaho and Washington. At this point, it is difficult to gauge the actual delegate count, but even his closest campaign advisors admit it would be virtually impossible for Paul to deny Romney the nomination in Tampa. So why are Republicans so concerned? Even if the nomination is not in play, an army of Paul delegates could cause significant problems, I guess. And they got another page on that, so you guys can check that out at Business Insider. We can keep him from the nomination, point blank. Nobody knows the numbers of delegates. I mean, not everybody's buying. Not all the states are winner take all, so there's a lot of delegates that haven't even been counted yet. And once they are, people will see that there is a chance Ron Paul is a lot closer than people think, or shoot, probably in the lead. Who knows? But he's definitely not at no 90-something or 100 delegates like they try to portray and lie, even in front of them. All right, so what else do we got going on here? What is this? Yeah, someone's talking about the main politics. Oh, this matter of fact, this at Washington Times I was telling you guys about. Why can't Mitt Romney, why can't he get delegates like Ron Paul? The answer is easy. He doesn't have no organization, really, and people are not enthusiastic about him. It says, with his wins in Maine and Nevada last weekend, it appears that some of us were correct when we said over a month ago that rumors of Ron Paul's campaign's demise were greatly exaggerated, and it was. The media continues to insinuate that there's not only something underhanded about Paul's strategy, but something fundamentally wrong with what Politico describes as the country's cumbersome and arcane system for nominating presidential candidates. According to this narrative, Paul supporters are undermining democracy by using said arcane rules to nullify the wishes of the electorate. One could argue that Paul's strategy is perfectly legitimate and that the process is deliberately set up the way it is to ensure that only informed and committed voters become delegates and choose the nominee. It is a Republican rather than a Democratic electoral process. This process doesn't disenfranchise anyone because everyone has an equal opportunity to become a delegate. The rules are not arcane. Arcane means that the information is only available to some people. The rules for how one can become a delegate and how the nominee is chosen are published on the Republican Party's website in each state and are equally available to everyone. That brings us to the real question, representing the other side of all the passive-aggressive attacks on Paul's strategy in the nominating process itself. Why can't Romney simply employ the same strategy as Ron Paul? Why can't he win delegate majorities in states where he won the popular vote? As far as I know, no one has conducted a poll of primary or caucus voters asking them why they did not participate in the delegate selection process. That means that one can only speculate as to why people who support Romney in the popular vote don't tend to go on to become delegates. However, there are things we know about the requirements for participating in the popular vote versus the requirements for becoming a delegate. The rules vary from state to state, but for the most part, one only need to be registered to vote in the primary or caucus. In some states, one must be a registered Republican to participate in the popular vote. In others, Democrats and independents can participate. If one meets those minimal qualifications, one may cast a vote in the primary or caucus. One does not have to be informed or on the issues or even know who is running. That doesn't necessarily mean that all or even most participants in popular votes are uninformed. However, there is no requirement that they are informed, and there is plenty of evidence that this may be a problem. For example, CNN did a poll following the 2008 Republican primary found that John McCain has strong support from voters who said that they disapproved of the Iraq War. Even though McCain had recently said that it would be fine with him if the U.S. stayed in Iraq for 100 years. Were these voters unaware of McCain's position? More recently, 40% of Democratic primary voters in West Virginia voted for a convicted felon who is currently serving a 17-year sentence for extortion in federal prison in Texas. While this was clearly a protest vote against Obama, voters interviewed by the Charleston Daily Mail said they didn't even know who Keith Judd was. And these, the results the media are so afraid will be overturned. This could never happen in the delegate selection process. By the time that a candidate for the RNC delegation has participated in the local caucus, the district or county conventions, and finally the state convention, he not only knows who all the candidates are, but can likely recite their policy positions. He's heard them over and over during that process. During all that debate and campaigning, he may also have learned that other candidates are right about a few things, even if he disagrees with them on most others. Sometimes supporters of competing candidates, even from coalitions, to achieve common interests. And that's at Washington Times. I'm Paco, your host. We'll be back.
Hi, I'm Dana, and I started out as a Ron Paul fan just like you. And now I'm a full-time volunteer leader at our Ron Paul headquarters in Venice, California. It starts with the first thing you hear Ron Paul say that is different than all the other politicians and that you just happen to agree with 100%. Next, there's a point where you